Hey guys, project-zodiac here, and I'm back, and I'm so excited because I'm finally releasing and finally doing my big, long-awaited Xenoblade Chronicles 3 full in-depth review. Quick disclaimer, this review will have spoilers for all of Xenoblade Chronicles 3, including waves 1, 2, and wave 3 as well. So keep in mind, right now it is April 14th. Wave 4 of the DLC is not released yet, and all we have is that one 30-second trailer for it. I will not be talking about Wave 4 in this review, just the first 3 waves of the DLC along with the main game as a whole. So again, this is going to have spoilers for all of that. As you guys can see, I have a lot to say, that's why this video is so long. And a quick disclaimer, I'm sorry that the editing might not be as good as my other Xenoblade videos. Part of the reason why this video is only being released in April is because I only wrote it in December, first of all, or most of it in December, specifically December 31st, 2022. And I was going to release it by the end of January, but I've been very, very busy, and the editing I wanted to do for it was just going to be very time consuming. So I just kept putting it off, and then the DLC Wave 3 released, and I had to play that and then add my thoughts into it. So that's why this review has been taking so long as well, just because of how lazy I have been, plus how busy, plus how stressed as well with a lot of things. So yeah. So that's why this video has taken a while for me to release, and that's why the video editing itself might not be the best, because I just want to get this video out, but I also want to have at least some of my editing elements in it. I'll see how that's going to look. I just want to talk about this game a lot because this game means a lot to me. So yeah, that's why it's been taking so long. And with Zelda Tears of the Kingdom coming out next month, I kind of just want to also just release this video so I can focus on that game and eventually do a review for it as well. Keep in mind, my thoughts for Wave 3, I only added today. So again, that's how behind I have been. And I'm also very sorry for my voice being very, very raspy and for me talking very low. It's 1 a.m. right now. So, and I've been talking all day, so yeah, sorry about that. But with all that said, welcome to my massive, spoiler-filled review of Xenoblade Chronicles 3, including DLC Waves 1, 2, and 3. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I have a lot to talk about. So with all that said, let's get into it. So as I've said many times before in many of my other videos, I love the Xeno series. It's a series that is very, very special to me. And my favorite out of all of the Xeno games up to this point was Xenoblade Chronicles 2. There was just so much to that game, including the music, the characters, the world, and so on. And I originally did try to write my thoughts on it, but I feel like I just didn't do enough justice in my writing for that. That is a review that I have written before, and I might do a video on it. I might not, I'm not sure. But I do want to actually do a video for all of my Xeno reviews, because I have written my thoughts on all of them. But I do just want to focus right now on Xenoblade 3 because that is what's currently out, and because I'm also just very busy. But it's not only just because of that. I also wanted to take a moment to really flesh out my thoughts for Xenoblade 3, because for me, not only is this game just as recent and I just beat it, as opposed to Xenoblade 2 where I beat it a few years ago and only really remember the few mechanics and mostly just rewatching the cutscenes in its entirety every now and then. But for me, Xenoblade 3 is more fresh because I just beat it. And honestly, I want to really dedicate all of that thoughts and emotions into it for many reasons, that included, but also because for me, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is just as special as Xenoblade 2. Maybe even more so for a few specific reasons, which I'll get to in a little bit. But with Xenoblade 2, when I wrote my thoughts on it, like I said, I only did so after watching all of the cutscenes and based off of my memories after not having played it for maybe 2, 3 years at this point. And again, but with Xenoblade 3, I just beat it and I analyzed it so much. And all of my videos is going to be linked below in regards to Xenoblade 3. So I analyzed it so much. I wrote so many essays on it. And I wanted to do all of that in that particular order that I did before I made my review on it. And that's why it took even longer for me to even write the review. That's why I wrote the review in December rather than in September when I beat the game. Just so that the game could really sink in and so I could really had analyzed everything in detail. And also so that I don't need to go over those particular topics in my review as well. So I hope that it is more understanding that you guys should definitely watch all the videos that I've made on Xenoblade 3 in the order that's going to be in the description below before you watch this, but it's not needed. It's just going to help enhance my thoughts in the games in the game as a whole and in the series as a whole as well. So that's the intro. The intro was long. Let's get into the actual review of it. The game was supposed to be released in September, and to everyone's surprise, it got moved forward and released a lot earlier on July 29. However, I was able to start playing it on July 23rd, 2022, rather than July 29. And I beat the game on September 4th, 2022, and I did the Xeno side quest in, the Xeno DLC in October, the week it was released. And up to that point, I had put over 200 hours into the game. And after a few months of writing essays on the game, I had now decided to write this essay on December 31st, 2022. And I was writing this literally right before I went to go watch Avatar 2 for the 7th time in theaters. Literally, and I was still going to see a lot more, and we'll get to that. But I say all of this more for sentimental reasons, and you will understand why in the next paragraph, basically. Xenoblade 3, and as I said, Xeno as a whole, means a lot to me. And I wanted to start off my entire review with why Xenoblade 3 is very special to me. Because it's going to help you guys understand why I love this game so much and everything that I have to say about the game as well. Like I said in the intro, I'm honestly not too sure if I like Xenoblade 3 more than I do for Xenoblade 2. And again, this is reasons I'm going to get to in a minute. But I will say this, I do like it as much as Xenoblade 2 as my favorite Xeno game in general and one of my all-time favorite games in general. And keep in mind, the Xeno series is one of my all-time favorite series in general. So honestly, I mentioned Avatar 2. Xenoblade 3 is very similar to my thoughts on Avatar 2, and I have made an hour-long review on Avatar 2, which I'll also link to in the description below if you guys want to watch that. But it's very similar to my thoughts on Avatar 2 and how much I like it in comparison to Avatar 1. And this is, again, very important to the review of Xenoblade 3. So with that said, now let's get into why this game means so much to me. When we had the Nintendo Direct in February 9, 2022, I was on the phone with a friend. And this friend doesn't really care about Nintendo that much, but he wanted to see what the Nintendo Direct was all about, especially since this particular Direct had a big hype around it. So he watched the Direct live with me. And when the first trailer for Xenoblade 3 started, I was honestly a bit upset. I remember saying, "Oh man, another Fire Emblem game?" But my words were taken back just a few seconds after I said them. Because when the action started and I saw glowing lights, I got very excited. I started saying, "Hold on, wait, no way." My friend was confused and he kept asking me what was going on, what was I seeing that was making me so excited. And I said, "Hold on, there's no way. Please tell me this is what I think it is." And then the mechs came in and I was even more sure of what I was thinking this actually was. And as the trailer went on, I was amazed by what I was seeing, and I was so confident that it was a new Xenoblade game. Again, when Noah appears in that trailer playing the flute, I swear I thought it was a Fire Emblem game and I was upset. But again, as soon as the lights and the mechs started showing up, I was so confident it was the new Xenoblade. But then the logo appeared and I shouted, "Yes, I was right. It is a new Xenoblade." And even my friend got excited with the trailer, and he never played a Xenoblade game before either. So I was just happy and so excited. Then the next few months, a lot of things happened. I got a new job, and I was also dealing with some personal things. And this new job was very stressful, and honestly, it still is. And in fact, I'm still in this new job now. As I said, it still is very stressful. So I was also basically feeling stressed out because of this new job and also missing my larger family. But I was just so excited for Xenoblade 3 and Avatar 2, as those were some of the biggest things in 2022 that I was excited for the most. Not the only things, just some of the biggest things. And then when they announced the special edition for Xenoblade 3, I was so excited for it and so ready to pre-order it. And the day came to pre-order it, and it was a huge mess. I tried for hours and hours while I was at work and even after work. Then they announced that there will be another day that they will release the pre-orders for, and the reason for that is because almost no one was able to get it the first time because Nintendo's website kept crashing hard. Only a few bots got in and got it for scalpers, but again, it just crashed terribly. So I was worried that the second day that they were going to have pre-orders available for, I wouldn't be in the US to get it. I hoped I would get it, but after Nintendo announced that there was going to be a second day for pre-orders, I was really worried about when this day would be for specific reasons. I still hoped I would get it though. Then, sometime later, they announced that Xenoblade 3 would release early, and I was so excited. As like I said, this was one of the biggest things I was most excited for in the year. And then another one of the things I was looking forward to the most in the year came, and that was my vacation. I went to see one half of my larger family in another country, and I was feeling at ease. I was feeling happy there. And then one day, while I was in that country, with no service on my phone, clinging to a small bar of the Wi-Fi of the house since we were sitting outside of the house, is when Nintendo released the second day of the pre-orders. Of course, I knew the day that it was, and this is why I was worried about when Nintendo would announce the second day. I was worried that the second day would be when I would be on my vacation and not before it. Unfortunately, they announced it as being a date that I was going to be outside of the country in. And that was what I was worried about. So there I am, the day that it's releasing, the time it's releasing, in a country that's 8 hours away, clinging to the Wi-Fi, trying to spend time with my family outside because everyone wanted to stay outside, trying to get this pre-order in. And for 3 hours, we sat there for some reason. I don't know why we didn't just go inside, but we just sat outside for 3 hours just talking. And I kept staring at the loading screen of the Nintendo website on my phone. And to be honest, after 3 hours, I really do actually have to thank God. And I do thank God so much because in the end, me and one of my friends were actually able to get our pre-orders in for the special edition that Nintendo was having. And to make it even more surprising, just a few minutes later after me and my friend got our pre-orders in, like literally 5 minutes later, it was sold out. We got some of the last copies of the special edition for Xenoblade. We got some of the last copies for the special edition for Xenoblade 3, and I was so happy I almost jumped up, and my family was so confused when they saw me. And at the same time, my friend was also very excited because this is his first special edition of any video game in general. To make it easier, this is not the same friend that watched that Nintendo Direct with me. This is a different friend. This particular friend is one that I had introduced Xenoblade to, and it's become and it's become one of his all-time favorite video games in general. So me and my friend were happy. We both got it. And then I continued my vacation and time passed. I had fun with my family, but then time was coming for me to return to the US. And I started to feel depressed but I kept putting aside that depression and that sadness as much as I could to enjoy my time with my family. And then the last few days came, and they were special and fun, just like every other day there, but a lot more melancholy in a way. And then I got on a plane to come back to the US, and anxiety hit me. During my layover between that country and the US, I even thought about changing my flight and just going back to my family rather than coming back to the US. But I had to come back. And when I did, I honestly was not okay. I was actually honestly very sad, and I was a bit depressed for many reasons that I won't get into. And also, work was making things harder and harder for me because, again, my job can be extremely stressful and it stresses me out even now. So I didn't even, I was actually just so not okay that I didn't even really want to get out of bed, to be honest. And what followed was that I basically kept playing that game nonstop for long periods of time. My focus was to do everything in the game. And basically, my routine was I would wake up, work, and as soon as work was done, it was just Xenoblade 3 from like the time I get, done with work till literally 2 a.m. All I did was play Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I barely watched any shows or movies. My focus was all on Xenoblade 3. Now, while this is not really something people should do, it honestly, though, did help me. It helped me in calming down and leaving the heavy sadness I was feeling. And the reason why it did that is because it took me to a new world, a new adventure, and it made me think about the countries my family is in and my own country too. For those of you that don't know, I'm not from the US, I'm from a different country, and I have family in technically 3 different countries. So it made me think about my country and the country that my family is, the 3 countries that my family is in as well. So in a way, Xenoblade 3 kind of made me feel like I was home in my country and in my family countries as well. And this helped me feel way more at ease. It kind of made me feel like I was still there in my vacation. And that is the reason for this entire long extended intro. Because if it's not for Xenoblade 3, it would have taken me a lot longer to come out of that sadness and longing that I was feeling. Because it wasn't just depression as well, and stress and anxiety, it was also longing because I was missing my family. And that is something that is still a factor for sure. But again, Xenoblade 3 was a game that helped me push through it and ease out of it and leave it in a more controlled situation, in a more controlled and natural, healthy way as it is now. So keep in mind, I still felt that heavy sadness till basically the beginning of September. So for like a whole month and a half, I was still not okay at all. And, I beat the game in September. So really, it was this game that helped push me through all of that heavy emotions. So without this game, I probably would still have been feeling as bad as I was even up till December when I originally written this review. So that is one of the biggest reasons why this game is so special to me. It's because it helped me. It reminded me of home and of my family in so many levels, and also of my friends in so many levels too. And all of the emotions that the characters were going through in this story for Xenoblade 3, they were also the same things I was feeling. And that just makes it even more special to me. I really connected with the story because it was so similar to what I was going through. The topic of life was also the focus of the game, and the game showed that topic really well, and it was also similar to what I was feeling in terms of everything in general. Even the loss of many loved ones was something that I was feeling in many ways as well. So for me, this game is very special for all of that and for other reasons, as I said. But with all of that out of the way, now I can explain those other reasons. Now I can actually go into this review because the more sentimental part of it is kind of explained now. So, with all that said, let's just get straight into those other reasons. And let's start with the music. The music is one of the biggest things in the entire Xeno series, and the music for this game is just simply breathtaking. The use of the piano and the flutes in the songs is so well done and it feels almost mystical. And this is special for me because I love the piano and I also love flute like instruments. I mean, just take a look at my channel. I even reviewed a alien looking ocarina and I have another ocarina as well. I have two ocarinas now. So again, I love wind instruments. I love the piano as well. And the fact that this music in this game has these two big factors in it, like as a core instrument for the music in this game, it just makes it so much more special to me. I also love how the music in this game has its own thing as well, but it also has elements from all of the other Xenoblade games as well. Literally all of them, even X and Future Connected and Torna. So the music here feels like a wonderful accumulation of all the things that came before in terms of music with the Xenoblade games. Just as the story and the gameplay as well also does. And best of all, the music of this game fits so perfectly with everything in the game itself. Now, let's go into the title screen music, for example. The title screen music itself is so emotional and it really brings the tone of the game to you right away. And even the main menu song, when you boot up the menu and look at your party, all of that, that song is so breathtaking and the electronic vibe to it as well fits the world so much. And going back into the flute elements, the flute songs as well also fits the mystical vibes of the story. And then there's even some rock sections that make the action stand out perfectly. Though I do have to be honest and say that the fireside song, the camping song basically, it does make me feel weird and I don't really like it because it basically just kind of makes me feel eerie and off. So yeah, I don't really like it, but it is still a fantastic song. So don't get me wrong, it's still a fantastic song. It just makes me feel off and weird. I just don't like it because of that, but it's a fantastic song. Also, the region songs are also fantastic, and honestly, I can just list so many fantastic songs and fantastic musical moments in this game, but it would just make this review really long, like longer than what it already is. So yeah, the music here is just really fantastic the music here is just really fantastic and emotional. But it makes me wonder, how much more do I like the music here over the soundtrack for Xenoblade 2, which is my favorite soundtrack in the Xeno series? Well, that soundtrack is somber, kind of similar to this one, but a little bit more culturally different. And I say that because the music there for Xenoblade 2, each region sounds like it's music from a different culture with its own style, with its own style, but a style that is still fitting to the tone of the game. Here, though, the music, while very diverse, does not have the concept of a different country or a different style. Here, the world is open, so it flows the same thematic across the entire game, but with different music that still kind of makes the areas feel unique while still staying true to the tone of the game. With that said though, the music in Xenoblade 2 is more somber on a inner level, and which is a personal one that is a little bit easier to relate to, while the music here is more somber on a outer level, one that the entire world feels and shares. So it's a little bit less easy to relate to, whereas Xenoblade 2's music is a little bit more easy to relate to. So because of these two differences, it does make it a little hard to decide which of the two soundtracks is better, though I would say that maybe it's just because I'm attached to the music for Xenoblade 2 and I do like the relatability from it. I would say that I do like the music from Xenoblade 2 just a little bit more, but again, that's only by a zero point 0.5 points or 0.5% more. Again, that does not mean that there are no songs in Xenoblade 3 that are. But again, that does not mean that there aren't any songs in Xenoblade 3 that are relatable. There are many songs that are relatable in Xenoblade 3. Some of them even made me feel the same kinds of sounds I would hear when I was on vacation with the music and with the types of music people played in the country that I was staying in. So even the music in this game helped me as well. Again, this music really helped me a lot. Again, this game as a whole really helped me a lot with that sensations that I was feeling before. But again, I am just saying that the two soundtracks are just as good as each other, just for different reasons. For one, but the one for Xenoblade 2 is only just slightly, and I do mean very slightly better, just because I feel like it's a little bit more personal. But that's all. Now, speaking of sounds, the sound design for Xenoblade 3 is amazing, and I'm not really a sound design kind of guy, but wow, as soon as this game starts, everything sounds so clear and so smooth. Even the menus and the voice recordings and the battle sounds, the explosion, the wind, the walking sounds, every single sound is so good, and it really surprised me with this. But again, I'm not really a sound guy, so I don't really have much more to say about the sounds. Other than that, other than I'm extremely impressed by it. So with that, let's just go into the next section: the world design, the gameplay, and the exploration. The world design, basically, the world of this game is Ionios, and it's a world that is made from two universes merging. And a lot of people say that this is boring because it kind of made the world itself look boring and less creative. But honestly, I do not agree with that. There's so much to explore, and there's so much to see, and literally so much to do. I walked around for hours in this world and would stop and just take in the scenery and watch the animals and the creatures do their daily things. I watched the sun rise and set, and I would notice so many little details. And this game has so many little details. It's really impressive. Now, it might not look as sharp as other open world games on more powerful systems such as the PS4 or the PS5, but it still looks amazing, and it still has so many breathtaking views. Like I said, it also has so many small details, things like the party getting dirty and you can wash them off, or the way that the hair blows and the way that the animals behave. Even the way that Noah's sword's handle is different when he's the one using his class versus when the other party members are using his class. Like, they do not have the Lucky 7 sword handle. Or another example is when Noah unleashes Lucky 7, he holds the sword differently to not kill people versus how he holds it when he's fighting machines. They put so much attention to literally everything in this game. I also loved walking around and seeing references to the other Xenoblade games that they did, and they did this in a natural way, and it works so well. I also loved the new tra and I also love the new traverse and I also love the new traveling mechanics that you can unlock. They don't really do much, but it lets you see some other parts of the world and explore what you see there as well. Overall, like I said in the intro, there were so many sections of this world that really made me feel like I was in vacation visiting my family outside of the US. And there are so many sections that actually ended up resembling that country a lot, and even my own country as well. But there's another thing that this game made me feel, and it's something that the Xenoblade games make me feel in general. And this is where it relates to Avatar, and this is why I brought up Avatar in the intro. The Xenoblade games remind me of Pandora from Avatar, and it's basically because of all the weird, cool animals it has. And just like Pandora, there are many sections in the Xenoblade games as a whole where the world glows at night. And honestly, Xenoblade is also really closely tied with my love for the Avatar movies. So much so that when I first saw the initial trailers for Xenoblade 1 so many years ago, like as in not a definitive edition, I'm talking about the Wii version of Xenoblade 1 when it was originally being released. When I saw trailers for that, I remember thinking how similar it looked to Pandora, and it was one of the biggest things that really did draw me into Xenoblade, to be honest. It's not the only thing, but it's one of the bigger things. So the short version is, in a way, I love Xenoblade as much as I love Avatar, though I do follow Xenoblade way more than I do for Avatar, and I have no merch for Avatar other than the popcorn bowl for Avatar 2 that I got. But anyway, my love for both is the same, just in different ways. But the similarity comes mostly the way that the world is for both the Avatar movies and the Xenoblade games, and Xenoblade 3 is no different to that. The world in Xenoblade 3 is wild and dangerous, just like it is on Pandora from Avatar, and it's also magical too while being very creative and organic and real. This world feels alive way more than that of Xenoblade 1 and X, but like the music section, it's really hard to say which world I like more. All Rest from Xenoblade 2 or Ionios from Xenoblade 3. They are different in many ways, both are super creative, but Ionios feels somber, barren, and lonely, and that ties into the way that the story is. And that's a good thing, because it reflects the story a lot. But Ionios also feels more, at the same time, alive and connected. But again, that is also due to the story. Both worlds reflect the tone of their stories so well. I do feel like the world design and gameplay wise is better in Xenoblade 3, so let's just give Xenoblade 3 a 0.5% in me liking the world design better for it. The world for Xenoblade 3 wants you to explore, and that's also kind of why it feels better. It just keeps giving you so many initiatives to explore the world of Ionios, and I love that as it pulls you to each section, making you look around to see something new, to see what you can find. And honestly, All Rest does that, but it feels more like a classic video game, like comparing, yeah, it kind of just feels like a classic video game compared to the cinematic nature that Ionios gives. Where in Ionios, it's all smoothly made to be explorable in a natural way, very similar to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And a big part of this is also just because of the side quests. The side quests help with that natural exploration. The side quests here are also done so much better than any Xeno game, in my opinion. And again, I've played all the Xeno games. In this game, they took all the best elements from all of the side quests in all of the Xenoblade games, and they improved on all of those side quests as well. Here, if you just play the game and focus on the main story, you still get a full view of that story, but not of the world. But if you do all of the side quests in Xenoblade 3, you are rewarded. You get to see so many areas of Ionios that you would not have seen if you just stuck to the main story of the game. And because because the main story don't because the main story doesn't take you to these amazing locations. Also, you will not see the more subtle themes and concepts that the game talks about, which I discussed a lot about in my big Xenoblade 3 analysis video. And you would not see one of the biggest things about this game, and that is connecting and freeing the world from the loop that the world is in. Basically, by doing the side quests, you get to learn so much more about the party and their friends and the world as a whole. You also get to learn so much more about the consoles and see more about the way that the world is structured in a thematic and narrative way. And you also help the world grow and connect with each other. This is all even more present at the end when you fight Zed, with everyone in the world coming together to help you. And you will also unlock new heroes by doing side quests. And these heroes are so well done, and their stories are also really, really good. These side quests just makes everyone and everything in this game feel so much more alive than it already did before. Another thing that helps with this is the combat. I love that you can use your Ouroboros from whenever you want to during combat, and the fusion of arts is genius. It really takes both combat styles from Xenoblade 1 and 2 and uses the best of them to make the combat in this game. Just like the music and the world design, the combat is a mixture of the other games as well, and it works so well. For me, this is the best combat the series has. But sadly, I just don't really like the chain attack that much. My favorite is definitely the chain attack from Xenoblade 2. Basically, for me, the elemental system there and the way there was even a announcer that kept saying all these cool things was really cool. And but here it's good, it works, and I do like it more than the chain attack from Xenoblade 1. But overall, the combat in Xenoblade 3 is the best, just the chain attack is better from Xenoblade 2. And also, I just gotta say this, I love the combat layout in this game. The neon orange works just so well. And that leads me into the menu. I love the menu, and I love that you can also change the difficulty level at any time. And I also love that you can, just like in Xenoblade 2, raise your level even more so than normally by resting if you want to. I also love that you are able to customize literally everything. You can wear different outfits, you can cook food that gives you benefits, you can use gems and even jump the different gem levels if you want. You can even mix and match outfits and your weapons. But I mean, okay, hold on. It's not the most in-depth outfit and weapon customization, but it's still really cool that they give you the option with what they have available. I also love that you can rest and talk when you are at the campsite, and seeing the different animations the party does in the campsites is also really cool, and it does make you feel like you're traveling with them. I love how the world of Ionios not only is a mixture of the worlds of Xenoblade 1 and 2, but also from X, which I talked about in my other essays as well. So definitely check out those videos. Going on to the next topic, I also love how the clothes and the design of the clothes and the design of the weapons and even the city are also really influenced by the style of Xenoblade X. So again, literally everything in this game is a reference to all the Xenoblade games, not just 1 and 2. I also love that you even have 7 party members fighting at once, and they're always out in the world with you. And also, I do love the class changing system as well. I also love that you get to walk throughout the world and see people fighting monsters and robots or monsters fighting monsters. This just feels real, and that you can choose which side you want to defend when you see two enemies fighting each other is also really cool. I also love that you can send off the dead soldiers you see all over the world by playing the flute, which is also really nice. Again, there's just so much done right here in this game, and I love it. But now that this section is done, let's go into the next one. Now we can talk about the characters. This is another reason why this game is so special to me. First, I knew I would like No and Mio from the very first trailer, but I was not sure how I would feel about the rest of the party. When the game started, honestly, I thought that Uni was just okay, and Senna too, but I really did not like Taion or Lance. I honestly thought that they were both just rude and ignorant in their own ways, and I know that that's their trait, but that's all there really was to them at first. At least that's what it looked like. That's what I'm trying to say. But as the game goes on and you get to spend time with them and you hear their thoughts and other things that happens with them and you see them starting to loosen up, honestly, I really came to like them as well. And by halfway through the game, I was cheering for them as well. And I was so surprised by how much I enjoyed Lance more than Uni by the end. But I do like Uni more than Taion, and Taion more than Senna. But Noah and Mio are still my favorites. And also, we can't forget about Rico and Manana. They're just adorable and funny and done really well too. The side characters in the game and the heroes were also really well done. And like the music, I can talk about each one, but it would really make this review really long. So let's just go on to the next part, which is I also really liked the villains and I thought that they were handled really well. Again, when you play the side quests, you get to learn and see a lot more about them. And many times, honestly, I would get very mad at the consoles and I would actually be feeling glad to be fighting them because of how messed up the consoles actually are and how badly they treat people. As for the main villain, though, Zed, I thought what they did with him was genius. Like, I'm not exaggerating. I really think how they handled Zed was genius, and his motives were very clear. Again, I talk about Zed in other essays where I also do explain the reasons for why I think what they did with him was genius. But yeah, overall, Zed is just as good as a villain as Malos. But sadly, a lot of people thought that Zed was uninspiring, boring, and just kind of stood there doing nothing. See, the thing is, he did do things. People just do not understand what the point of Zed was. Again, they were expecting things and they didn't really understand what the point of Zed was because they were kind of expecting other things to be part of the story and they were kind of expecting for Zed to be handled totally different. Probably a lot similar to the other main villains from the Xenoblade games. So people basically let their expectations and lack of understanding of what Zed is basically make them feel like he was a terrible villain when he wasn't. Again, I do talk a lot more about Zed and what he is and his purpose and what he does in many other video essays. So again, definitely check those videos out. But anyway, overall, Zed was a great and fantastic villain. Also, I feel like every time he speaks, he kind of makes me think of David Bowie, especially him in the movie Labyrinth, which I love. But anyway, overall, Zed is fantastic. Now, there were a few consoles I didn't really like, and just a few of the heroes as well that I didn't really like. But again, that list is super small, maybe like 3 or 4 consoles and maybe like 2 or 3 for the heroes. But I do have to say this straight out. Shania is the worst Xeno character ever. What they do with her and how they handled her here in this game is great. They did a fantastic job in how they handled Shania. But her as a person, I hated how Shania is. Literally, Shania is the worst Xeno character ever. Whenever I would see her, I would just groan. And again, this was intentional. They made her this way and they wanted you to feel that. So again, they did a great job at making you feel this way. But wow, I really did not like her. Also, I kind of wish that Guernica stayed around longer as he was really, really cool. Again, I don't mind that they killed him. I just wish that he stayed around longer because you only see him for like 10 minutes, not even. So, again, I don't really have any other complaints with the characters other than this. Now, I said that the characters were special to me, and that's true. But the person in particular that was special to me was Noah. As a main character, I think he was just as great as Shulk and Rex and Alma, and honestly, all of them were fantastic. But if I had to rank them, Alma would be my least favorite, and then Shulk, and then Rex. The reason why is basically because Alma is more of a mystery, and most of Xenoblade 3, she's really just your leader, so you don't really get to know a lot about her until the end, and maybe a few side quests here and there. And what they set up with Alma is more of a plot twist and a mystery for her, and it kind of makes you question everything and no answers are really given as the game basically ends on a cliffhanger. So I'm sure that Alma will be fantastic. They just need to really flesh her out more if they ever do a Xenoblade X2. Now, as for Shulk, though I always thought he was an amazing character, and he still is, and in a way I relate a lot to him in many ways. He is shy, he likes to figure how things work. He likes his little village and his friends, and he was raised by an adopted or maybe even stepdad who was really cool. But with Shulk, he was always focused on the revenge side of things in his journey. And though near the end of the game he calms down and changes his mind about it, it's just his lust for revenge is not very similar to me. I just felt like he was so focused on revenge for most of the game, and it kind of took away a part of who he really is as a person. Now, with Rex, I relate a lot to him as well, probably in more ways than I do with Shulk. Rex is more open minded, very friendly, loud, and was raised by a somewhat adopted dad slash stepdad, and basically the people of his village. He loves to travel, he has big dreams, and just wants to make people happy. He is also really laid back, but does let things slip and doesn't always pay attention. So he does come off as being a little dumb sometimes, but he is not. He is also very emotional. Like, his whole reason for his adventure is because he just simply wants to help Pyra out and also the rest of the party. And we also find out that he sends most of his money that he gets from his salvaging job back home to his village just to try and help them. He is also a little bit clueless with some things, but also very stubborn. And he's also really smart at the same time. So I always thought that a lot of this reflects me a lot, and just his personality too. But again, so does a lot of Shulk's personality as well. But then we have Noah. For me, he is tied with Rex as my favorite Xeno series main character. Some of that is for personal reasons that we will get to, but also because of who Noah is as a person. Like Rex and Shulk, I also relate a lot to Noah, but I do so just as much as I did for Rex. But at the same time, it's more because Noah is kind of a mixture of Rex and Shulk. Noah is very quiet. He thinks a lot. He's a bit shy, but when he feels he has to speak, he does, and he can be very vocal about things. He is also very caring and just wants to help people. He also analyzes things really well and is able to figure things out very fast, but sometimes he can be a bit slow with understanding some things. He's also very honest and tries to do what he can. But he's also not afraid to be more aggressive when he needs to be. He also loves music and art and the world around him, and he's very emotional, even though he doesn't always display a lot of emotion, and he tends to seem very serious, but he's not. So while he is very serious on the outside and very reserved at the same time, he's also very playful and honestly not very serious, and he's also very open and open-minded. So again, Noah kind of feels like a mixture of Shulk and Rex, and his own personality as well, with the whole art side of things too. And honestly, all of this is very relatable to me. So Noah is very special to me because of how much I relate to him and how he is as a character as well. I think he has great traits that make him a great main character, and a main character that is honestly not shown very often in games or movies. And again, he is also very similar to Rex, but a little bit flipped. So Rex is loud almost all the time, but Noah is more soft-spoken most of the time. And again, like I was saying earlier, he's very similar to Rex, just flipped. For example, Rex is loud most of the time, but Noah is more soft-spoken most of the time. Basically, the two are like two sides of the same main concept. Again, including ideas from Shulk, basically. But at the same time, I keep talking about Shulk and Rex. Noah does have some characteristics and some elements from Alma as well, where we even find out that there's a big mystery behind Noah, which I do talk about a bit in my essay where I analyze the themes of the game. And like I said, he's like Shulk in many ways as well. So again, I just feel like Noah is, like the world design and the music and the combat and the story, I feel like Noah is also a accumulation of all the Xenoblade games' main characters, while also being his own person too. So while I do think that he is tied with Rex as my favorite main character in the series, I also do feel like he is a good representation of the Xenoblade series as well. But now we have come to the last section of this review, and that is the story. Now, I know a lot of people say that they think this is the weakest out of the main trilogy in terms of story, or honestly, out of all of the Xenoblade games. But honestly, that is not true. In short, Xenoblade 1 starts off as a revenge story that grows to become more complicated. Xenoblade X starts off as a daily job story that has you looking for the life hold, but well, honestly, it just kind of stays that way. And it keeps building up the mysteries and revelations, but that's really just the point of that story. Xenoblade 2 starts out with a boy meets girl, but ends up growing to be a very complicated story that involves so many different factors. While Xenoblade 3's story starts off as a war story, it grows and becomes more complicated and literally a multi-universal story that becomes super complex and probably a little bit more complex than some of the other games, and also a little bit more spiritual as well. Lots of people, including myself, had put so much expectations on what we all wanted the story of Xenoblade 3 to look like and to have as well, especially since we knew from the very first trailer that it would involve the two universes of Xenoblade 1 and 2. But because so many people had so many expectations, unfortunately, not a lot of people got what they wanted. So because of that, a lot of people felt like the game handled the multi-universe story and the callbacks terribly, or they felt that the story was just bland and boring. I personally do not agree with any of that. Like I said, I also had my own expectations, and while a lot of them did come true in the ways that I was hoping for, some did so in different ways. And also a lot of my expectations wasn't really on it, but most of it was. But again, with that said, Monolith Soft, the developers of the game, also said that this game was to be played as a standalone game, that it could be played with no knowledge of the other games so that anyone could enjoy it. And that is also very well and true. And we will get back to that soon. But when they originally said that, I thought that they would have left the callbacks and references as more subtle things, and they did. But these things are still very present and in your face, especially towards the end of the game. So I think that the way that they handled the multi-universe plot was done really well. I just wish that they did not tell us right away before the game even released that this was going to be a multi-universal story, even though it was clear to the fans of the series from the start of the game. It still would have been nice to keep us guessing how these things from these two universes are the same, but it still would have been nice to keep us guessing how these things from the two universes are in the same place before the reveal at the start of the last chapter. Again, they just straight out revealed that in the very first trailer. If you're a fan of the games, you were able to pick that up. But they, even in press releases, they just straight out said it's the two universes mixed. So again, I just wish that they kind of didn't reveal that right away and that they just, let you experience it and come to that realization as you play the game. But other than that, the revelation to a lot of things in the story and the twists were all done really well, and some of them was mind-blowing and shocking, especially when Zed tells the party the things that he does near the end of the game. Though I will say this, some things was very predictable. The thing about N being another Noah was obvious from the moment we saw that picture of N before the game even released, and also from when we first see him in the game. Another really predictable thing was that there was going to be another group involved, which would be the city people, but Anyway, a lot of the things were really shocking and really surprising, and the game kept me so focused on the story as a whole as well, including the side quest stories as well. Also, this story was the darkest Xenoblade game, in my opinion. It was also just very violent and somber, which was honestly surprising. Like, it really surprised me, and I loved it. It was also extremely emotional and extremely tense. There was a lot of times where I was shocked and holding on, trying to brace myself for what was happening because it was just so well done. I can give so many examples because there's so many of them. But like I said so many times in this review already, that would just make this review so much longer than what it already is. This game was so emotional in so many ways. And yes, the last few chapters were mega emotional, but I'm talking about just even before all of that. Just the story as a whole is emotional, and it just keeps getting more emotional as the game goes on. The story did a fantastic job at showing us pure emotion from everyone and the things that they faced. It also did a fantastic job in getting me very invested in the characters. So much so that, like I said, I came to love all of them a lot, especially the pairs when they are talking with one another, as in like Lance talking to Senna, Noah with Mio, and Uni with Hyon. When they're talking with their pairs, it is amazing. You really get to see how exposed and vulnerable they are with each other, especially with their pairs. You get to see how true they are with their pairs compared to how they are when they're talking to the group as a whole. And I do have to say this, right away from the first trailer, I did ship Noah and Mio. But as the game went on, I honestly started to ship the other pairs too. One thing I love about this story is how these people are divided by two groups. Noah, Lance, and Uni are from the Kevis side, and the rest are from the Agnian side. Both sides are at war, and they break from that war, and they just try to befriend each other. And you see that they don't trust each other at first, and you see them slowly beginning to be friends. And basically, they end up beginning to become like a family, and it takes time to get to that point. And you only really get to see them get to that point first with their pairs and then as a group. I thought that this was so beautifully done and realistic, and again, it relates a lot to my own life in many ways. Many games do this kind of things. You know, strangers meet up, go on a journey, become friends, but here it didn't feel forced. It just felt natural and real, and again, I love that. The other Xeno games does that as well, but here it's just mastered perfectly. I also love that this game actually gives you a sense of how much time has actually passed in your journey. They straight out tell you that it would take 3 months to get to Sword March, and as you go there, you can tell that time is passing. And by the time you're there, so much has happened, and you can see that visually as well, that time has passed. And not a lot of games or stories, such as, stories in books, movies, or shows, not a lot of stories in general do things like this. Anyway, back to the emotional side of things. The game gets you invested so much with these characters and things that they learn and see. And while this might be cliche for some people, honestly, it's only cliche because they're not really putting themselves in the shoes of these characters. The game focuses a lot on life, and this is another reason why the game is so special to me. It talks about life, the beauty in it, and the bad. It talks about family and how important and complicated it is, and about friendships and how special that is. It talks about love and what comes from love. It talks about death and the afterlife. It talks about births and how special a new life is. And honestly, for us, this is things we all know. For us, it's not new. So a lot of people kind of felt let down about this particular topic and theme about Xenoblade 3, and it's another thing that people complained about the story. But really, a lot of people felt let down about this, not just because of that, but because honestly, it's one of those little things in real life where people only look at the main idea and they don't see the little things. For example, the small joy of joking with your friend or hugging a loved one, of a kiss or of holding a new life in the world, or even of the special little moments of just like sitting and having an intimate conversation with someone you love about their thoughts or your thoughts. These are the little moments that the game focuses on. And how many people take that for granted? The game is not just focusing on the big idea of what life is, it's focusing on the little things that people in general just take for granted. So a lot of people do not realize that. So they take these little moments the game has and the main idea of it for granted, just like we tend to do so with things in the real world, like I just explained. And that is why a lot of people complain about it because, again, they take those things for granted. And honestly, one of the moments that made me tear up a good bit was when the party was in the city and they were seeing all of those things about life for the first time. That really did make me tear up. It wasn't the only thing that made me tear up. There was many things before it and many things after it, but I just wanted to bring that one into view because it relates to what we just talked about. Again, people in the city and people in the real world know about life and all these little things, but the party does not. So you have to remember they were slaves that were mind controlled and brainwashed their entire lives. They did not even notice the difference between each other. So when they're seeing what life is, it honestly was so beautifully done. So much so that, as I said, I was emotional during that scene in the city. And again, not just the city one. I also love how before they even get to the city, they're learning about things that they never knew before, such as sexual tension, or how animals are different sizes, different genders, and so on. And then they even try to teach each other and explain things to each other to basically not just each other as well, but to the other colonies that they free, because then those colonies to go through the same learning process that they're going through. And they're only learning this by themselves until they reach the city with their explained things. Just shows that they are growing and understanding things little by little, just as we do as we age. I think that Takahashi, who is the creator of the Xeno series, is who said in an interview for this game that he made this game with the focus of young adults playing it, mostly people in their 20s and 30s, because it is around that age group that people really start to notice these things in their lives or something like that, if I remember that interview correctly. And honestly, I think he is right. For me, it's a bit different because ever since I was little, I noticed these things. But a lot of my friends who are my age, and we are all in our 20s, they never really paid attention to things like this before. But now they're starting to talk with me about how they never realized the things I told them to pay attention to before. And now they're starting to pay attention to those things. This, again, is going to be a connection to Avatar. This is very similar to Avatar 2, where James Cameron, the director of that movie, said that the people who are much older and with kids are probably going to relate a lot more to Avatar 2 in terms of the themes and the concepts and behaviors of the characters in Avatar 2, way more than people in their 20s. Many reviewers actually agreed with that statement when Avatar 2 released. And honestly, watching the movie, I can relate to some of it to some extent, especially with the connections he was talking about. But I was honestly able to relate more to the kids in Avatar 2 than to the adults, basically. Because in the movie, the kids are closer to my age group than the adults are. And the kids ended up behaving the way that someone in their teens or 20s would. So again, I understand what James Cameron was talking about, but not to the full extent of it. Because again, I related more to the kids. Because again, that is the age group around that, I am part of. Now, that doesn't mean that people my age can't relate to what James Cameron was talking about, because there are many, many people my age who do get married or who do have kids. I'm just talking about from my experience in particular. Now, as with Xenoblade 3, as I said, it's kind of the same idea, but aimed directly at people at my age way more than Avatar 2 is. The topic of life with the young was done so well in Xenoblade 3. And now, moving on from that, I just also wanted to say that the last three chapters of this game is super emotional and spiritual. The jail scene, the eclipse, the ending, all of it, I was crying, especially during that ending. During the ending of the game, I was not just emotional, I was in actual tears crying. The tears was of sadness and joy, it was pure melancholy. And again, it's not just because of how well done the story is and the characters and the ending as well. I was melancholy not just because of that, but because again, it all relates to my situation with me having to leave my family and my friends to come back into the US, but also because of how connected I got to the characters. And like many other people, I'm not sure if I want a prequel or a sequel DLC story expansion in Xenoblade 3 DLC Wave 4. I personally think it's going to be a mix of both of it. I think it might be like 70% of a prequel and then 30% of a sequel or something like that. I think it's going to be both. But anyway, they set up so much in the base Xenoblade 3 related to the past, and it's basically a mystery, and I want to see more of it. But I really want to know what happened to the party and the world after the game ended. Also, really quickly, what is up with eclipses in media in the year of 2022? This is another example between Xenoblade and Avatar. And spoilers for Avatar, The Way of Water, sorry, but in Xenoblade 3 and Avatar 2, both releasing in 2002, there's a section with an eclipse and it's related to death. So, what is up with 2022 and eclipses? And yeah, I just found that really interesting. Both did the eclipse situation really well. But when I saw Avatar 2 and that eclipse situation came up, I'm like, Xenoblade 3, thank you for the traumatic flashback to that scene in Xenoblade 3 Avatar 2. Thank you for doing the exact same thing because it's flashbacks and traumatic and wow, okay. But it's in a good way. I literally meant it in a good way. So I just thought that it was hilarious when that came up. But again, it's another connection between Xenoblade and Avatar. And again, that scene in Xenoblade 3 was really emotional and really well done, and it left a huge impact. But with that said, I also love how spiritual the game is, and I do go more into this topic in my other essay that I wrote. But I just wanted to say it is very spiritual and probably the most spiritual Xenoblade game for sure. I also think that the ending battle was amazing and everything was explained really well in the game. And also the topics and heavy themes that the Xeno series is known for is also really well done here. And it also shows how masterful they have gotten with telling all of these concepts and themes and basically showing them. But now, I talked a bit about side quests and about the characters and a bit about the story and the villain. The last thing I think I need to talk about is how I think they handle the connections with the past games. As I said earlier, people had a lot of expectations with this, and so did I. But like how people took for granted the theme of life in the game and were disappointed in that, they also let their expectations get the better of them with the callbacks, and this made them be disappointed in the callbacks as well. Keep in mind, as the team behind the game said, this game can be played by itself, and I love that. So you really do not need to know everything about the games to enjoy it. It's a self-contained story that I personally think explains everything really well, and given the standalone nature of it, I think it was done really, really well. But you are also rewarded if you play the other games. As I said earlier, the biggest connections, other than the world locations and Melia and Nia, is all revealed later on in the game, and in subtle ways throughout the game as well. Things such as like the founder statues and the information under the statues, and like the visual aspect with the city and the different races visual aspect as well. Like there's subtle hints throughout all of it. The bigger things comes towards the end. The biggest connections, though, like I said, comes at the end, and we see Shulk's Monado, and then we see Poppy as well, and then we also see the team of Xenoblade 2 in a picture, and they're much older. But other than that, there isn't a lot of bigger references, and other than like a few dialogues here and there, especially when you do the Melia and Nia hero quest, you get a little bit more information as well. So yeah, for me, I personally think that this was really well done. It still ties everything together, and it also really shows how you can use a cameo and make it impactful as well. For example, people who never played the other games will be left wondering what some of these big revelations mean. And by big revelations, I mean the big callbacks. But this is a good wonder because then they can look it up and see that it is a reference to the past games. So in short, they took the show don't tell approach with the connections and the callbacks. I mean, even with Mio being the daughter of Rex and Nia is done that way as well. And how much time actually had passed between the end of Xenoblade 1 and 2 to the start of Xenoblade 3, that is also done in that way too, a show don't tell way. And again, I think that this was done masterfully. And I do say show don't tell, but they actually do tell, but they do it in a way that is natural, that does fall under the show don't tell format. Also, I also like that a lot of things from the past games does get addressed, and even with just a few images and lines of dialogue. Honestly, I do find it satisfying to know a bit more about what happened with Rex and Shulk. And real quick, before I forget, I also love that the first half of the game is more sided with the Xenoblade 1 side of things, while the second half is more sided with the Xenoblade 2 side of things, and also with its own, like this own game's narrative being connected throughout each half. So I thought that that was really cool. But now back to my thoughts on the callbacks. I'm also glad that we learned more about what happened to Rex and Shulk, but I am a little bit disappointed in some things. First, I love that we got information on what happened to the party for Xenoblade 2, but I was really upset that there was no mentions of what happened to the party for Xenoblade 1, not even during Melia's hero quest. All we get is that Melia has Shulk's sword, and that Shulk was the mentor of one of the first Ouroboros, one of the founders. Or maybe he was one of the first Ouroboros. That's literally all we know about anything regarding the Xenoblade 1 party. So I do wish we got information about it, just like we did for Xenoblade 2. And I'm really hoping Wave 4 of the DLC will touch on both elements a lot more for Xenoblade 1 and Xenoblade 2, and just as evenly. Because again, even though I love Xenoblade 2 and the party for all of the games are really special and important to me, I would still also like them to have balanced out information with the party from Xenoblade 1. So them not including that honestly was really upsetting. Also, there was a line that Melia says when you meet the fake Melia, so it's not even Melia saying it, it's fake Melia saying it. And I think it was something like my Aegis. So I thought that when she said my Aegis, I thought that she was talking about Elvis. But in the end, she was not, I guess. So I'm not really sure why she said that. And another thing I wish that they did was talking about the Aegises and the conduit, because we really get nothing about them other than one line from Nia that humans fought for something so powerful forever ago. And another little callback basically to the conduit is also we see on the console's armors on their chest there is a symbol that looks like the conduit as well. And this could be a reference to the conduit, and we only really get also only one line of dialogue, which I just talked about regarding the conduit. So really there's only like two references to the conduit. So I do wish we learned more about where it went and what happened to it, and also with Elvis and the other Aegises. But it looks like we are gonna get some of that addressed with the Wave 4 DLC as well. But even if we don't really get so much information about it, really it's okay because it was clearly shown that it disappeared at the end of Xenoblade 2. So it's kind of safe to assume that the conduit went to another dimension or a plane of existence. But I still really wish we learned more about it, and I really wish Wave 4 is going to address it as well as all the other things I want to be addressed. So that's the party situations, the heroes, the founders, the the ending of Xenoblade 3 as well, and the Aegis's situation as well, and just the conduit as well too. So I really hope Wave 4 addresses a lot of these things, and I'm sure it is going to. Now, one thing I'm not too sure if Wave 4 is going to touch on is I would also like to know how Nia became a queen. And yeah, basically what happened to the party of both games. Like I said, because we get that picture of the party of Xenoblade 2 and it shows them like in their 30s and Rex having kids with Paramithra and Nia. And we know that Rex still uses the Aegis swords because of the statue with the founders. And it shows Rex and it tells us that. But like, what happened to them? Like, what actually happened to them, you know? And yeah, same thing for the Xenoblade 1 party. So while I do think that they had done enough to show us the callbacks, it's just these ones I think is needed to be explained and touched on. And it does look like Wave 4 might do that. Um, but again, we can't really, you know, be thinking so much about it because it might go in a totally different direction. But it does definitely look like a lot of these things is going to be addressed in Wave 4. So I'm really excited for that. Now, also, before the game came out, I did, like I said, have my own theories and my own expectations. And one of those theories and expectations is that in the base game, we would see Shulk and Rex as spirits. And that would have been so cool. And maybe, maybe one of them would have come up as a console. I don't know. But sadly, they didn't go with either of that option. But again, it's okay. I'm just curious and excited to find out what actually happened to them. So again, as I played through the game, I did have some complaints. But by the end of the game, just about all those complaints were addressed, and honestly, I don't really have them anymore. But there was a few that did stay, and I do want to talk about those. I do think that they showed us Zed way too early. Like, right away from the moment you see him, you can tell he's the main villain. And that's fine because you can clearly tell he's the main villain. I thought it was going to be way too obvious and that basically another villain would actually show up and Zed was like the puppet or something like that. So when I realized that he was actually the main villain and that he wasn't the puppet, everybody else was the puppets technically. So yeah, when I realized he was the main villain, I was okay with it because again, I loved how they handled him and I grew to love him as the main villain, as I said earlier. I just wish that they introduced him a little bit later or in a different form and had him reveal his true identity later on. Because again, I think he was just shown way too early. Also, I think that they could have been a bit more clear on the connections with Xenoblade X because, again, in the marketing, they don't include it at all. And for me, there are many connections to Xenoblade X, which, again, I made 2 essays on that particular topic before, so definitely watch it. So, even though I was able to see these connections and references, a lot of people don't and do not think that Xenoblade X is connected to the series at all, which really upsets me because I'm pretty sure it is. There's clearly some kind of connection or reference between it and the main like 3 games. Another complaint I have is that I basically want to know more about the siblings painting. Almost nobody talks about it in the fandom, and there's almost no information about it in the game other than a console wanted to destroy it because it was a reminder of the past and is a threat. But there was so much focus on this painting, and it really has to mean something because it just looks unlike anything in the Xenoblade series as a whole, so it's very confusing. The last complaints I have is that there's no console A, though that might come up in the story DLC, which is Wave 4. And as again, I do think that Elvis could be console A just because of the name, as many people do, but that's not my full theory on it. It's just one of my theories. Also, another complaint is that the Senna side story was more of a Gondor Ascension quest rather than a Senna side story. So Senna kind of gets left to the side on her own side story, and I kind of felt bad for her. And I was very confused why it was called the Senna side story. Yes, she is important to it, but when I tell you guys, Gondor literally takes the spotlight along with Shania. It's literally the Gondor and Shania Ascension quest. That is what Shania's side story is for. Like, it's good because we get to see a little bit more of her development, but it's literally only at the very end of it. Everything else is just Gondor and Shania. So again, it's good. She does take some time to reflect on herself in it, but it was not Senna's side story, even though it was called that. So that was another complaint. Some other smaller complaints I had was that the game basically has you walking around after each side quest to look for new side quests, rather than the new side quests just appearing as icons on the map. Also, most of the side quests basically just came from discussions that you can only unlock by doing the same thing that I just said, which is walking around and looking for it. Now, however, there is a big complaint that I have that was never changed, at least not until right now on April 14th, and well, April 14th, 2023, and that is that the full map does not tell you where the side quests are, and it does not tell you if something is above you or below you. And the full map, I'm not talking about the mini map, I'm talking about like just the full map. It does not show you where the containers are, or the dead soldiers, or pathways, and so on. It doesn't show you any of that and where they are. Only the mini map and secondary mini map do. So I didn't really like that at all. So I don't understand why is it that the mini map and the like slightly bigger mini map does that, but the full map does not. That really is confusing and stressful and really annoying. Also, I do not like that you can only add one marker at a time. And every time, basically, that a monster wants to fight you as well as you're walking across the map, there's a big slowdown effect, and it happens all the time, which is annoying because when you're running around and they're trying to run away from fights and not go on fights, and it just keeps happening because they start chasing you, it becomes really annoying really fast. Thankfully, though, as you get stronger and stronger and your level gets higher than the enemies, they do not do that as much. So that kind of gets addressed, but again, your level has to be higher than everyone else, basically. Otherwise, that will keep happening. So I do think that that was a little bit annoying, but I still do like that concept as well about the slowdown. It's just, again, when you're trying to run and then you got 50 monsters chasing after you, and the slowdown happens when each one locks onto you, it can be annoying. Also, I kind of noticed that at the start of the game, for some reason, the flashback scenes looked really blurry, and I didn't, you know, I didn't really understand that because that kind of got fixed as it went on, even with flashback scenes. So yeah, it's mostly like for the first like 2, maybe 3 chapters whenever there's a flashback, but particularly the first 2 at the most. Also, I do not like that you cannot change your clothes until the end of chapter 2. It honestly should have been unlocked when the party got their new clothes at the end of chapter 1. So I'm not so sure why they made you wait throughout the very end of the next chapter, considering that they get that ability at the end of the chapter right before it. I also don't like that there are no chapter names when playing the game. The chapter names are only viewable in the event theater, And I think this is a little bit different compared to the other ones, if I remember correctly, like the other Xenoblade games. I could be wrong on that, but yeah, I just don't like that you can only see the chapter names in the event theater. Also, another complaint that I have, which is just in general with Xenoblade, is that the party wears the clothes that you have on them in the cutscenes. So that's fine, but for me, I like to have them have their traditional clothes. So I wish that there would be a way to kind of make it so that they always just have their traditional clothes in the cutscenes, and you kind of do that in the event theater. But like when you're watching it for the first time and trying to take screenshots, and they're not wearing their traditional outfits during that cutscene, for me, it can be a little bit annoying. But I do understand why it is like that, and I'm glad it is like that because it shows your characters the way that you're making them look. So again, I just wish that they implemented an option to do that rather than it being exclusive just to the theater mode. Does that make any sense? I think it does. And another complaint that I have is, like I said, the party basically wears the outfit that you have them equipped with. But then there is one way that you can bypass that issue, and that is just by toggling in the outfit that they always wear when a cutscene is gonna be coming up. Um, and keeping their class something else, so that way that their outfit stays the same but the class is different. So you can do that, and that's kind of what I did, and then I would like turn that option off when I was just exploring or doing side quests without cutscenes. um, but I do wish that there was just a way, instead of having to do that back and forth, that in-game cutscenes as you're playing them from the first time, that you can toggle on an option that allows them to only be wearing their default clothes. Um, but again, I'm glad that they show whatever you're wearing, and yes, you can still bypass that by having that option in the in-game mechanic itself. I'm just talking specifically about cutscenes because the in-game mechanic does translate over to the cutscenes. But yeah, I've rambled enough about that, particularly when you guys understand what I'm trying to say. But going back into what I was trying to say, with that particular situation, you can have them wear whatever clothes they're wearing in the cutscenes. But my next complaint is that many times they will have the class weapon as well. So, for example, you have a gunner, but like with Noah, like let's say Noah is with the Full Metal Jacket class. I think that's the name, Gray's class, the dual wielding pistol class. So let's say you give that to Noah. In the cutscene, there's a few cutscenes where he's gonna have that particular class weapon. But then there are many times where you can have that class equipped, but he's just gonna have his regular Lucky 7 sword. I didn't understand why they went that route. I think that they should have just kept the weapons the same in that particular cutscene, if that makes any sense. Like, keep their default weapons in that particular cutscene unless they're equipped with that class. Because again, it kind of seems like it kind of picked and chose. Oh yeah, this moment we need him to have his Lucky 7, so even though he has this class equipped, we're just gonna make him use the Lucky 7. So it is a little bit confusing, um, but I just wish that they kind of handled that a little better, in my opinion. Also, I'm kind of upset that heart to hearts are gone and they're kind of replaced by the discussions. And the discussions are fine, but I kind of do miss the heart to hearts as well. But again, discussions are a great option and a great thing as well. Another thing that I don't like is that they keep treating 30 and 40-year-olds as really old people, which is not true. 30 and 40-year-olds are still young people, like really young people. So, yeah, they should not be treating them like they're old 60, 70-year-olds. Like they're not, they're still young. Also, another thing I didn't like is that I kind of wish that all the heroes showed up when you were resting in like the campsites rather than just the one in your party. And another thing is that Sagiri is not able to walk around outside of her levis when she's in the party. I also wish we could play the flute whenever we want, because that would have been an amazing feature just to hear the little sound, especially because if you did what I did, which is, off-sing all the dead soldiers, you can't play the flute anymore because the flute is only playable when you're off-seeing a dead soldier. So I do wish that you could play the flute whenever you wanted. Now, the last complaint I have is a concept that was not used properly, but it was a very, very cool concept. And that concept is that the higher your warning level that you get from freeing colonies, the more people from that colonies will attack you and see you as a threat unless they are freed from the flame clock system. This was an amazing idea that they literally did not use past the first like chapter basically. So that upset me so much because they do not use it. It's literally, hey, this is a feature, and then it's like, yep, nope, nah, that doesn't exist. That's basically how it was, and that upset me so much. Because again, that is a amazing idea, and it would basically make it so that people from other colonies would attack you and see you as a threat unless they're free from the flame clock system. So again, it's such a great idea. I just wish that they used it. Also, I don't really like that there are no extra Agnian or Kavesi soldiers around looking for you to fight you the higher your warning level or running rank is with the two nations. There's just a few of them here and there. And when I say a few, I mean like I probably came across, I don't know, like just in the wild, not fighting a monster or each other, like just there, I probably came across like five of them, and that's it. So yeah, really, those are the biggest complaints I have with the games, and a lot of them are just nitpicking, more so than actual complaints, to be honest. But again, some of them are some actual complaints, and again, I had more as I played the game, but after I beat the game and basically analyzed things, I realized that a lot of my other complaints was actually addressed and explained and shown. So yeah, these are basically what is left of my complaints. Now, for this particular paragraph that I'm about to start talking right now, I am writing today on April 14th, 2023, and I have now seen Avatar 2 12 times in the theaters. And I have played more of Xenoblade 3 with DLC Wave 3 as well. And I kind of wanted to basically now talk about my thoughts about the DLC, but again, not counting DLC Wave 4. So basically, DLC Wave 2 and 3 both had a decent story, though I do prefer Ino's story over Masha's. The content in Wave 3 though was definitely better and more than the content in Wave 2, and I loved all the new outfits from both waves. But I do have some complaints with the DLC so far. I wish that there were some outfits to basically represent Xenoblade X. I mean, technically, I suppose you can say we kind of had that with the default outfits, or the outfits from the city, but still. I mean, like, give them Elma's outfit or something. At least I don't think that they did. Maybe they did and I just didn't notice because I haven't unlocked all of the outfits yet. Um, well, I did for Wave 2. I didn't do any of the outfits for Wave 3 and I didn't really look them up. I only saw like the initial trailer one. So if there is Xenoblade X outfits in Wave 3, I'm sorry I have not realized those yet. Also, I do wish that Masha's story was a bit better, as I feel like it wasn't really worth being a DLC hero. To be honest, some of the heroes in the base game felt better options as a DLC hero than Masha's story. Because again, Masha was just, her story is just kind of there. Um, I'm not disappointed with the DLC. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I think that Masha should have been flipped with somebody else. from the base game. That's all. Um, so again, we still got great content. I'm not saying that we don't. I'm just saying her story should not have been DLC, I don't think. But but I do like that she did give context to the city's lore and that we do see how Rex had influence on the people that his protege or his student uh, influenced. So we see how Rex influenced the people of his house, basically. Um, so I loved that. I really, really love that element of it. So that was probably the best part about Masha's story. But unfortunately, at the same time, it would have been nice to get some more things related to the Xenoblade 1 side of things, because with Wave 3, in terms of the story that we got in Wave 3, because in Wave 2 with Eno, we already did get information about things related to the Xenoblade 2 set of things. So a lot of people did complain about this particular thing, that they felt like the Wave 2 and 3 was more in favor of Xenoblade 2, and it made the game feel a lot more unbalanced with the callbacks and the connections. I personally don't think so. I personally think that the entire game is balanced perfectly across Xenoblade 1 and 2 references, other than those complaints that I mentioned earlier. Um, so yeah, I didn't really mind this, but I do understand the complaints about this. And again, I can kind of agree with it, but it's not something that really bothered me so much. I thought it was really cool that we got this additional information on Rex and, the Xenoblade 2 party as a whole. But again, we don't know how Wave 4 is going to look. So it's most likely going to be a better balance in general. But again, I'm just making it clear. Even with Waves 2 and 3 released, I still think that the balance between Xenoblade 1 and 2's callbacks and references are perfectly balanced. Though I do have to agree, it does seem like they did focus or be a little bit more upfront with things related to Xenoblade 2 in the DLC. I do agree with that. I do agree with that. But that is the little update that I wanted to add. Everything else I've been reading so far is from my original writing from December 31st, 2022. So yeah, when Wave 4 is released, and I'll play that, I'll do a totally separate video review for that, as that is the big story expansion. So now let's go back to the original things that I was writing for this review before Wave 3 released. So yeah, in the end, this game is very special to me, as I have said many times, and I think it ends the Cloud Saga perfectly. Again, not taking into consideration how Wave 4 is going to look like, but just as it stands right now, I think it ends the Cloud Saga perfectly. And, really, really well done, in my opinion. I think it was great. There was a lot of great callbacks to all the past Xeno games, which is not something I really mentioned about. But yes, this game does talk a lot about things related to the previous Xeno games. It's not connected to them, but the references are there. There is a lot of references to the games, especially to Xenogears, but there's also things related to Xenosaga. But yeah, a lot of people are basically saying that this is Xenogears. It's not, as I explained in my other video reviews, my video essays on Xenoblade 3. Xenoblade 3 is part 6 of the Perfect Work Saga. Xenogears is part 5. Definitely just watch that so that you guys can understand that better. But yeah, I can definitely understand why people do say that, though, that it's part 5. That it's a full remake of Xenogears. But again, it's not. It just has a lot of references to it. But again, it's part 6. It's the next and final chapter in the Perfect Work story. And that leads me into what I was about to say now, is that this game is the final chapter in the Perfect Work story. The story that Takahashi has been trying to tell since Xenogears. This is part 6 of the 6-part saga that was outlined in the Perfect Works uh, art book for Xenogears. And again, I've made a video about this before. That is basically a timeline that gave summaries about how the overall story would be. And part 6 was always a mystery, and we finally got it with with Xenoblade 3. Again, I've made videos in detail explaining how each game retells each part and how Xenoblade is a retelling of Xeno's saga and a retelling of Xenogears at the same time, and how Xeno's saga is also a retelling of Xenogears. So again, definitely check those videos out. This is the story Takahashi's been trying to tell for 25 years, I think 25 years, 25, 26 years. And you can tell all the passion that was put into this game and all the love too. This game is proof of viewing your vision through and committing to it even if there are challenges along the way. Again, this dude took 25 to 26 years to get his vision across and tell this perfect work story, this 6-part saga. And I'm so glad that he did. Takahashi was finally able to realize his dream and now can go into the next saga that he had basically been planning now. He and his team had put so much content into this game as well, and there's so much that the producers were actually telling him that there was too much content in terms of the music and so on, but he pushed through and was able to get a massive work of art out for all of us to enjoy. It is so again, I am so glad that he was able to do this and that he stuck through to his passion and this beautiful work of art that he has made. I'm just really glad he was finally able to realize his dream in telling the perfect work story without any compromisations and how he wanted to tell it. And basically from the beginning to the end. So I'm just so glad he finally got to tell the perfect work story and concluding it with Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Like I told you all earlier, it is hard for me to say which Xenoblade game is my favorite. I love Xenoblade 3 as much as 2. I don't really know how to pick between the two, so that's why it's hard. I basically love the inner struggles that the story for Xenoblade 2 told, but I also love the bigger metaphysical story that Xenoblade 3 told. For me, this is, like I said earlier, trying to pick which Avatar movie I like more, 1 or 2. I have seen Avatar 2 12 times in theaters, yet even so, I'm still not sure which one I like more. I like both for different reasons. So there are some reasons that I like it more than one, and then there are some reasons that I like Avatar 1 more than 2. But for me, they are tied, and that's the exact same situation I find myself with in terms of Xenoblade 3 and Xenoblade 2. I like both just as much as each other, but for different reasons. Reasons one does better than the other, basically. So I can't really pick one over the other. Not story and character wise, that is, but gameplay wise. For gameplay wise, it's clearly done better in Xenoblade 3. Now, if I had to say what each game felt like in the Xenoblade series, it would be that the first game, Xenoblade 1, felt like an epic and grand adventure and a MMORPG, given the way that the world, gameplay, and story are told and made, and the battle mechanics as well. Now, Xenoblade X would feel like a slightly better MMORPG that improves on the MMORPG feel of it, alongside basically the world, the combat, and the exploration, while also actually having some online connectivity. Now, as for Xenoblade 2, it was different. It didn't even feel like a JRPG for me, even though at the same time it kind of does. To be honest, it made me think of some of my favorite games on the PS2, such as Jak and Dexter or Kingdom Hearts. So for me, Xenoblade 2 kind of feels like a classic PS2 game in a way. But for Xenoblade 3, it felt like an experience. It felt like an epic and really emotional movie on the scale of Avatar 1 and 2. You can tell that straight away from the way that the cutscenes are done, basically, in Xenoblade 3. The atmosphere and even the music feels more cinematic too. Honestly, I have said this before in some of my other written reviews for the Xeno series that, you know, at this current moment, I haven't actually made videos for. I've only just written them. But basically, what I said in those reviews was that Takahashi should really make a movie because I am sure it would be fantastic. And he basically did that with Xenoblade 3. He basically did one massively long, amazing movie with Xenoblade 3. But again, I do hope Takahashi gets to make a movie one day because he definitely knows how to tell a story visually. And also, not just visually, but like edit wise and uh story script wise as well. Like the dude just knows how to tell a story in general. So yes, for me, he needs to make a movie soon. And the closest thing we're getting to that is Xenoblade 3 because this thing is so cinematic. It's freaking cinematic. Like, it's just amazing. I'm just so impressed how cinematic this game was. For me, I think Xenoblade 3, I think it's a masterpiece. There's nothing else really to say about it. It 100% reaches the ranks of some of my all time favorite games, tied with a few others, including Zelda Breath of the Wild and Xenoblade 2, and a few other games as well. For me, this is the second longest Xeno related essay I have written, the first being that massive Xenoblade 3 analysis video where I analyzed all the themes and concepts in Xenoblade 3 because that was also about an hour. So, to be honest, even though this took me so long to write, so long to record, it's now 3 a.m. I started this at midnight 40, so at 12:40. Um, and I have work in a few hours. My throat hurts, but because I've just been talking all day and I've been doing this nonstop in one sitting. Either way, I am glad that this is finally being done. And I am so glad to have finally said my thoughts in this beautiful game. I don't know how many of you are actually going to watch this entire thing, but for those of you that have watched it, thank you for allowing me to ramble and expressing my thoughts and my experiences and my connectivity to this amazing, beautiful, creative, crazy, fantastic, cool, amazing game. So just thank you for allowing me to do that and hearing my words and my thoughts on it. So I just wanted to say that. I also just can't wait for the story expansion DLC, so DLC Wave 4, just to see what comes next for all of these characters that we love. And I'm so excited to see what comes next for the Xenoblade series as a whole because it's already been confirmed that this is not the end of the series, just the end of this particular saga. So, kind of similar to like how Kingdom Hearts ended the Dark Maker saga with Kingdom Hearts 3, which was the past, well, since 2002. And now they're going to start something new. But it's still continuing Sora's story. So we don't know if the next Xenoblade saga is going to be anything related to any of these characters or anything like that. We don't know. But I'm still excited to see whatever the next saga for Xenoblade is going to look like. And I also, like I said, wanted to thank you guys, the viewers who are watching this. Thank you for watching all of it. Even if some people only watched a part of it, I thank them for watching a part of it as well. Like, thank you just for at least hearing some of the things I had to say in regards to this game that is amazing for me. But I also wanted to thank Takahashi for this series and this game. Just simply thank you, Takahashi, for making it. It helped me a lot, and I relate a lot to this game in so many ways, just as you had basically hoped that somebody in their 20s would relate to it. Because again, that is what they kind of made this game to appeal towards. So thank you for making this game, Takahashi, and for making this series as a whole, because I relate to this series as a whole in many ways. So just simply thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm so excited to see what comes next. With all that said, guys, once again, thank you all for watching this. I know I've said that a lot, and you're probably like, why is this dude repeating this so many times? It's just because I am really grateful. So just thank you for everything, for watching, commenting, liking, whatever it is that you guys did. Even if you heard the first 5 minutes, just thank you. I'm gonna go to sleep now. I'm gonna have to edit this for a long period of time now. So hopefully I can upload it soon. But thank you everyone for watching and hearing if you put it on as a podcast. Yeah. So just thank you so much. Rate, comment, subscribe, and let me know your experiences with Xenoblade or with the Xeno series as a whole as well. Yeah, just in general. Thank you guys so much. Rate, comment, subscribe. Have a good day. And just thank you.